Okay. So the first thing is whenever you are doing, whenever you are writing the script, the basic things that you must have to be aware of or you must have to know is first with what and all the objects I need to deal with when I'm writing the script for a test case, when I'm automating a test case, then what and all the objects that I'm going to deal with in the application. Now let's take for example, okay, so we will take this application for our automation implementation. I'll say demo.orange.hrm. This is what our application for now, and then first I need to write the script for login. First thing, what and all the objects when I want to write the login or when I want to perform the login transaction, what objects that I need to deal with? First question. Then how I manage those objects, because every object that you need to work with, that object information must have to be provided to the tool. Any tool, whatever it is, don't consider only the UFT, don't consider only Selenium, or don't consider only Encoded UI or other tool. Don't consider only a particular automation tool. Any automation tool, the basic thing, these are the basics are for every tool, just for entire automation, every automation it is. First, what and all the objects that I need to deal, and where this object information has to be stored. First I need to know what objects, and then how those objects can be located by using the tool. What kind of information that I need to provide. That means information is nothing but the combination of properties and those property values. Okay, ultimately. So what kind of information that I need to take for the object, and what kind of information I need to provide to the tool to locate the object uniquely or to identify the object uniquely. Then where this object information has to be stored. Okay, and when I store the object information, what is the hierarchy it created for the object? You have to follow the same hierarchy. Okay, then next is, okay, when I take in the object, what class of object it's considered? Then what is the action that I need to perform on that? Method will vary based on the action. So you should be aware of what kind of action, so that you can easily understand which method can be used there. Then what is the input that I need to provide? Then in case if it is input I need to provide, then from where the input is, from where that input is coming, is it directly I need to provide, is it a constant value or is it a dynamic value? Getting? Then next is, okay, is this action I need to perform straightforward or on conditional basis I need to perform? Is it the action whatever I perform, are there any preconditions set for this? Because sometimes I don't want to perform an action every time when I execute. First, before this there are certain preconditions. Then perform this action only on the precondition. Let's say for example you have to come till here, maybe from your home. Then that is an action you perform. But you straightforward you won't come directly, right? Before that probably there is an intimation comes to you. Maybe the class is there or may not be there. So if you come straight forward, maybe sometimes after performing the action, then you realize that you might have done a wrong transaction, wrong action. So what you do is, before that you do some verification. On the verification, if the verification satisfies, the condition satisfies, then you do that. So is that condition to be executed on conditional basis or not? Or sometimes the transaction need to be executed iteratively. So is that action only once or need to perform multiple times? These are the questions that you must have to answer before you write the coding. You just don't write simply. Any tool, whatever the tool that you take, then this kind of questionnaire that you have to make yourself. then you can be a good programmer always. Right? Okay. Now there is one more also you need to know is I'm using some properties to identify the object. Then the properties will be keep changing. I mean the values of those properties will be keep changing. It's not the same properties. Now assume that, okay, to identify a person, I'm using the properties like this. Okay, maybe the name of the person and weight of the person and gender. When I say this, okay, name and gender won't get difference, will be same throughout the lifetime. But weight of the person, I mean weight is one of the property which we have given to the tool to identify the object. But the property value, can I give the same value, say 80 now, I will give. But is it 80 throughout? Maybe it can be reduced or it can be increased. Right? So whatever the property that I am giving to identify the object, one or more properties, then those property values are being constant throughout the period of the project or lifetime of the project, or those property values are keep changing. Okay? So that's what we need to know. In case if the values are changing, what should we do? How we can manage? We discussed about regular expression. We learned regular expression right in the VB script. What is that? In case if the text values keep changing, we use the patterns instead of the exact value. We give the patterns. Okay, the value will be in this format. If any of this object has got this property and value in this format, then take that object. So instead of giving the exact value, we use the patterns. So all these are questions like if the object is dynamic or static depends on the properties. If the property values are constant, object is static. If the property values are dynamic, then object is dynamic. So what are the objects I need to deal with? What kind of information that I need to take? And is that property value static or dynamic? What is the class it's considered? What is the hierarchy it's taken? What is the method that I need to perform? What is the input that I need to take? Is that input static or dynamic? Okay, in case if it is dynamic, how I can manage? Is it I have to take the value from external, or I need to directly pass the value, or I need to use some method to generate the random value, unique values, or or are there any methods the tool provides? And also, okay, is this action to be executed straightforward without any conditions, or is this method to be executed on conditional basis? And is this method to be executed once, procedure or the method, and or this method need to be executed multiple times? How it is going to be? So if you can have these answers for these questions, then scripting is nothing for you. Any tool, whatever the tool that you take, scripting is nothing. So all your scripting is based on this questionnaire. Okay, so we need to know how this we can answer to these questions in UFT. Then nothing but we need to know how we can write the script. Okay, now so the first one is here. What is our test case? Maybe we are going to create a test script for create an employee. Okay, so we'll take the basic flow, then we will move into different flows. Okay, now when I write the script for create employee, the first thing is we need to log in. Login is automatic process again. I can't do login manually and create employee through automation. Okay, now when I want to log in, then I need to enter the username, I need to enter the password, and then I need to click on login button. Right? So what should be done here? I need to store the information of username, and I need to store the information of password. I need to store the information of login button, because these are the objects I need to deal with. Then where you store this information? Tool to tool it may vary. So in UFT we have a feature called object repository. There we store. Again, don't write. In the object repository I told that the object repository generally two types we have, a local and a shared repository. Okay, then again you decide which repository I need to store. Is this objects I'm going to use only once, only in one script or only in one action, or these objects need to be used in different places as well or different actions. Maybe login or password, login button or password username use only once. Only in the login, wherever we just create one procedure for login. Whenever login is required, then we call it. So only one place we use, only one action. So that action can be reused wherever you want. So local repository is fine. But consider some of the objects like maybe save button or new button or add, delete, all these buttons. It's not in only one action, right? It comes, those objects will come in different actions, different procedures. But if you store them in local again, then wherever you need again you need to re-add, right? If I add them into one action repository, one local repository, you can use them only in that particular action. If I want to use them in a different action or in a different test, again I need to add one more time. That means same objects need to be added for every local, right? So what I need to do, instead of adding to the local, I decide we will add them to one centralized repository. Whenever I want to use these objects in any action, I will just map that repository to the action. So when I map this centralized repository, nothing but the shared repository, to an action, then all the objects will be loaded into this action repository so that I can use. If I want to use the objects in 10 different actions, then this repository I will map into 10 actions so that all the objects will be available for all 10 actions. In case if I add any new objects to the centralized one, those objects will be automatically loaded into action so that I can use the objects also. One time add and you can use in multiple places. This is where the shared repository comes. But we will discuss about this local and shared in detail later, but for us intention is the basic. First we learn the scripting, the syntax and how we generate the script, and then we how you create shared, how you create local and all we will get next. Okay, first I want to add username, password, login, right? Okay, first understand what class of object it belongs to, each object. But initially, since you are a beginner, probably you cannot judge what kind of object it is. Like there are different class of objects are there, like we call it as an edit, web edit, or we call it as an win edit. If it is Windows based application and edit field, we call it as an win edit. Or if it is an SAP application and it's an edit field, SAP edit. Or if it is a Java based, remember when I say Java based, it is not like UI is developed by HTML here, internal logic is Java, but that remains a web object, not a Java object. But Java object, in a sense, the UI also, this object is also defined by Java. Then that will be Java edit. Like that, so a class will be based on the technology which is used to define the UI. And generally login, then this will be a button, right? And then there will be web edit, or there will be a link, or there will be a web list, or there will be a radio group of radio buttons. Then there will be a image, checkbox. All those are the different class it belongs to. Okay. Now what I have to do is, before we start scripting, then I need to understand. See, if you look at the spy, object spy, or if you retrieve the properties here, this is web edit. There are only identification properties. Forget about native for a while, that comes later. So there are a lot of properties available here for the web edit. Then when I take a button, consider only the particular class, because password and username comes in the same class, but based on the properties we can differentiate them. But class wise we will understand what kind of properties available for each class of object. Again, when I say a button, it's a web button, there are a lot of properties available, plenty of the properties available for that. Similarly, this is a link. When I take a link, again there are a lot of properties available for the link. Then when I take an image, then do I need to use all those properties to identify this object? There are nearly 15 to 20 properties displayed for every object. If I use all these properties for every object, what happens is when the script is being executed, all those properties need to be compared with every object to say then object is unique or multiple objects have got same properties and values. So since it has to compare with all 20 properties with all the objects, then performance will be reduced. So what we will do is before we use these objects, before we add the object information to the repository, first we need to tell to the tool saying that, hey, okay, if I add a web edit, don't take all the properties of the web edit, maybe take only the name of it and take only the HTML tag of it and take only a certain property, maybe ID or anything for web edit. So you can differentiate the web edits based on these properties, these three properties. Okay, when I add the web button, take only the name property, enough for me. Or when I add a link to the repository, take only these properties of the link, maybe text of the link and maybe the HTML tag of the link. When I add an image, take only these properties. So I need to tell to the tool saying that, what and all the properties that need to be taken when we add the object to the repository. What kind of information that it has to capture. Then what we need to do is the first setting that we have to do, go to tools. Can you see something called object identification there? Tools, object identification. And remember, this is only to know the basic, but each and every topic we have to discuss thoroughly, and we are going to see them, detailed concept later. But before that, first, okay, we just have to understand how the scripting will be written. Then tools, object identification. You can see some environment is standard and web. But I have selected only web add-in, right? Standard Windows is common. No matter whatever the add-in you select, plugin you select, that will be displayed there. But remaining are depends on the add-in which you select. If I have selected SAP add-in, then that will SAP environment will be displayed. Or if I selected .NET, then this environment will be displayed there. Or if I selected Java, then Java would have been displayed. As soon as I select the environment, whatever the class of objects that we get in the Java, not the individual username or password, at class level, right? Then it will display all these kinds of objects will be there in the web environment. You can see that you have the browser object and you have the frame or image. Then image can if you have multiple images, based on the properties it can differentiate when we add. But that is the base class. Image is the base class. And page or link or button or checkbox or edit, there are a lot of that. Okay. Now when I say here, when I add the browser object, what is the property I have selected here? Name. Right? That means select the name property. Or if you don't want the name, so don't take any of the property, and there is something called creation time which will be added automatically. But if you see that there is something called smart identification, mandatory and assistive, forget about that. Okay, so you don't need to understand them now, because as I told, we are coming to detailed discussion about this later. Then, okay, so when it comes to the frame, then you can see name and HTML ID it has to take. In case assistive is nothing but supporting to the mandatory. In case more objects have got the same name, consider HTML ID. That's what I mean to say here. Then, when I add a web edit, use name property and use HTML tag. I don't want to use HTML ID. So use name and HTML tag. But again, remember that technology to technology, application to application, those properties may vary. I mean, property names might be same, but I know the preference vary. Okay. So when the object is static, when the object is dynamic, say for example, here I am using name, but in some applications, name may not be unique for the objects. For multiple objects, they might have given the same name. So in such cases, my preference may get changed. Instead of name, I will ask to consider a different property. Or after adding the object, then I will realize then the name is not helping me to identify the object. So after adding also in the repository, you can change the properties, preference. Okay, this is you are setting the preference that's it. What kind of properties that has to be taken, or what kind of properties that UFT should capture when I add the object to the repository. So you are setting the preference here. That is the first thing that we have to do. This is one-time setting. One-time setting. Once you do these settings, it will not force you to do these settings every time. As soon as you install the tool and as before you start writing the script for first time, then you do the settings. Okay. Next, I have done object identification settings now. That means what kind of properties that it has to take whenever I add a specific class of object. Next, understand what are all the objects I need to add. I need to add username, I need to password and then login. Then where I need to add to the repository. Then open the repository here. Resources, object repository. And there is something called repository manager. Forget about that. Then generally whenever we want to deal the shared repository, we go to the manager. Okay. So whenever you want to deal with only local repository, you directly open object repository window. I have added repository. Sorry, I have not added the repository. By default, whenever action is created, one local repository will be automatically created for it. But when you open object repository window, it will automatically load the local repository of that particular action. Okay. Now, to add the objects to the repository, click on an option called Add Objects to Local. So when you click on, sometimes when you click on this, it may define as web element. Don't add that. So now it's showing it as web edit. It has to be web edit. Then only add it. So I just clicked on that object. You must have to do click on add objects to local and go and click on the object in the application. Click on OK. And see, for web edit, I asked to take name and HTML tag, right? It's consider only these two properties. Now, if you see browser, page, then the object, whatever the object that I want to. What is the hierarchy it's generated? First browser object, look at that tree structure. Then page object, then the object whatever I have added, right? So while writing the script, you must have to consider the same hierarchy. You cannot directly say web edit. You must have to say like in this browser, in this page, this is the field. That's how you have to say. Whatever the hierarchy it's created, that's why I told one of the point. What is the hierarchy it's captured when we add the object? The same hierarchy has to be followed in the scripting also. Then add the password. So each and every object, whatever you need to deal with, just add it. But what properties that I can give preference and all, then if you have that question, you can just wait for some time. Maybe you will get the experience on it, and then you only can judge which properties can be considered. Okay, because as I told, then the preferences will vary from project to project always. Okay. Now I have added the required objects, and if you see here, for some of the objects and all, it is displayed the name here, and there is one more name. If you see, then this name we call it as logical name. This name it is called logical name. Then what is meant by logical name is, this name will be used to link the repository and script. So what you will do in the script, if you provide that name, then it will come to the repository and locate the object by that name based on the logical name. Logical names are mainly used to link the script and repository always. So to relate the object from script to repository, we use logical names. You are allowed to change the logical name with better meaningful naming conventions. We'll come to that part later. Okay, now I have added 3 objects to the repository, right? Next. Now I got whatever the objects need to be used. I got the class of objects. I got the hierarchy of the objects. I just added. Next, what I need to do? I need to write the script on these objects to perform the required actions. Okay, what is the first action? I need to enter the username. That is the first step, right? So, to enter the username, to access the username field, what is the hierarchy it's created? Browser first, page, then object. Now again, when I add, right, sometimes I may deal with multiple browsers. So multiple browser objects might be added, but I need to go for a particular object only, whatever in which browser the object is added. Now let's say I'm adding Orange HRM, maybe I'm using a Google browser also. I mean, sometimes I need to deal with. I will create one browser object for one Orange HRM, another browser object for Google. So I need to go under Orange HRM browser only. Okay, I cannot directly say browser. Which browser also I need to specify. How can I specify which browser in the script? Based on the logical name that we have given in the repository. Then you can say browser name is automatically populated there because only one browser object is there in the repository. So if there is only one object is there with that particular class in that hierarchy, name will be automatically populated. If more than one object is there with that class, name will not be auto populated, it will give you the drop down or list. So you can select a particular object. You will see that because web edits we have two, username is a web edit and password also a web edit. Let's see what happens. Then what is the next object? Under browser, page. You can see that. In case if the page is not displayed in that easy menu or the intelligence menu that we call it as, that means the page object is not there. Because only one page object is there under that browser, so name is auto populated. Next, what is the object? We need to enter the username. Username is under page object only, right? Then what is the class it belongs to? Web edit. Now there are two web edits. Password also a web edit. Username also a web edit. Select the username. Now I got the object. I have written the hierarchy. Okay, next, what is the action that you need to perform? I need to enter the value, right? That's what it is. So in terms of the tool, I can say like this, I need to set the value into the field, edit field. Then what is the method that I need to use for this is set. Okay? Then what is the input that I need to provide? Am I going to use the same username and password every time for every login? No. Or in case if it is yes, write it. Let's see whether that step will be performed or not. The recording and run settings need to be changed. Yesterday I told about recording and run settings, right? Yeah, any open browser. The browser is already open, so I'm just selecting the first option, and this option was explained yesterday. Then okay, I will come back to those options later again. Let's see, the value will be entered into the edit field or not. Can you see the value is entered there? Okay, now is it going to be the same value every time? Maybe no, right? Value will be keep changing. So whenever the value gets changed, every time I need to come to the script and then update the value. But is it the person or is it only you who will be executing the script every time? Maybe no. You can't expect that you are the person who is going to execute, because sometimes the different team member or maybe the different person will be executing the scripts and that person doesn't know the scripting knowledge. He just wants to execute, that's it. Maybe the functional tester, manual tester who doesn't know anything about script. But when you are executing, then what you can do? You can go and update the value. Right? But when a functional tester is executing the script, you can't go and update the value. Right? Then what should I do? I don't want script level modification whenever there is any value changes. Nobody wants to touch I don't want anybody to touch my script. So what I do is, since but anyway, I can't give a condition say that you can execute only with one set of data. Probably the data will be keep changing. So what I will do, I need to extract the test data from the script and store the data from external location, or store the data in external location, and then pass or configure that external location to the script, so that data will be taken from external location. Then where I can do that. As I told, UFT gives various options for, in the beginning we have discussed, UFT give various options for data parameterization, and one of the inbuilt feature that we have is data table. I told something about data table, the definition. What is mean by data table? So to store the test data and why we need to store the test data for data parameterization, and we'll see how exactly that happens. See, what I'm doing here is I'm creating a parameter in the data table. Column header is nothing but the name of the parameter. If you have multiple values, then you can store the values in each row. Okay? Then so whatever the user that I want to store or what I want to pass, then I'm storing it in the data table. Now, how I can pass the data from this data table to script? That's a question. Then you don't need to understand these methods and all. Data table is a detailed concept that we are getting. So understand only the concept. I'm just specifying what is the name of, from which parameter it has to take and from which sheet it has to take. Since I have stored, where I have stored the data in global sheet, right? The parameter is created in global sheet, so I'm specifying it as DT global sheet here. So data table dot value is a method which we can use to retrieve the value from a data table. But from which parameter it has to retrieve, and from that parameter is placed in which sheet, that also I need to provide. So it retrieves the value whatever is currently stored under this parameter and will take into this variable. Okay, so now it entered the value, right? Okay, now let me change the value. Now assume that I need to log in with a different user. I have the user called probably, I need to log in with this user, but I don't want anything, any change at script level. I don't touch my script. But what I will do is, whenever the value gets changed, I just updated the value here, and see the value whatever I have given in the data table, the same value will be taken or not. In case if the value is already there, it overwrites. Remember, it will not append to the existing text. Can you see? Ladies well. So in case if the username has been changed, then again you can come here. I don't need to touch my script. I can just come here and update the value. So whenever the value gets changed, then it's easy for me to update the values. Right? Where if I hardcode the value, then I will lose the flexibility to test my application or to execute my script with different sets of data. Right? Okay. Now, when I use data table, again, one of the advantages here, it parameterize the script so that you can change the data anytime. That's the flexibility, or that is the advantage that you get. But the disadvantage with the data table is, one data table will be created for one test. If I create one more test, then another data table it will be. So whenever you want to modify the data, you need to open the test, and then only you can open the data table, and then you can modify the data. Assume that I need to execute 100 scripts, and then I need to update the data. Then what I have to do to modify the data? I need to open first test and change the data, save it. Open second test, update the data, save it. A drawback it is. So I need to open the test and then do the update. But when I have 2 or 3 scripts, then that is okay for me to open. But when I have huge amount of scripts, then I cannot open each and every test and then update the data in the data table. Right? So when you are using one option, then you need to think of this. Okay, what kind of flexibilities that I need, and what kind of scenarios that I get in the future, then whether this feature gives me that kind of flexibility or not. You have to think of it and then use it. Okay, now when I have huge amount of scripts, then updating the test data will take a lot of time here, because I need to open each and every test. Then what should be done in this case? Instead of opening the test, each and every test, if I can modify the test data without opening the test, so that it will be easy for me. If I want to update for more tests, I don't need to open any of the tests. I can just open the external location directly, and then I can update the data. Right? So what should I do here? So maybe instead of global sheet also for particular test, local sheet for particular action in the test. I can have multiple. So local sheet is not a solution. I'll come to the local sheet parts in some time. That also we need to understand. Create a data file which is external to the test. Then read from there. Right? So Excel sheet can be an external to the test. Right? So what I will do is here, instead of using data table, I'm just removing the parameter here. Then what I'm doing is, I'm just opening an Excel. I create the parameters. First row will be the parameters always in the Excel. I will save this, and where it is, D. So I'm just copying the folder, and I will save this under a specific folder. Because it's an external file, you have to save it in a different location. I'm just saving it in external location. Just let it be. It's not responding. Let me do one thing here. So under scripts, I'll create one more folder called test data. Okay. Then what I will do is, under test data, I will store the data as I'll just data file. It's not username. You don't create for one parameter one Excel, right? It contains with multiple sheets, and also for one scenario or one test case you can maintain one sheet if you want, or still that can be reduced seat counter. We will see going forward. I'm saving it as data file, the file name. Okay, now this is invalid for me. I don't, because I'm not storing the data in data table. Okay, so I have to read the data from Excel. So we have learned, while learning VB script, we have learned how to read the data from Excel. But for you people, you are going to get that later. Okay, so reading the data from Excel. Set Excel equals to set O workbook equals to Excel dot workbooks dot open. I'll just give us a str file path, and then I will update the file path. Then set O sheet equals to workbook dot worksheets of, then give as one, or you can say sheet one, I mean the name of the sheet. So since it is first sheet, I'm just directly giving it as one. Then str username equals to then O sheet dot cells of 2, 1. I mean data is there in second row, right? So I'm saying second row comma first column it is, because when I say 1, 1, it will take the data from first row. First row is nothing but the column header. I don't need to retrieve the column header, I need to retrieve the data. But again, as you know, earlier we have discussed when we are learning the VB script, we discussed saying that the column number may be varying. It's not only the first column all the time. Sometimes username may be second column or third column and all. We are going to create those functions later. Okay, so we are not discussing about the detailed script for now. Only the concept, just how we can write the scripts and all. Then what and all the things that to be taken care, and how each question can be answered. Then once I retrieve the values from the Excel, I don't need to keep this Excel. I will release the variables as soon as you are done with the variables. Release them. How do you release? Just to say nothing, so that memory will be released, so that script will be faster. Okay, always make this as a standard. Once you are done with the variables, and if the variable contains objects, right, more memory will be utilized for those variables. So if you don't, even though you close that workbook and quit that, but the memory will be remain there. But objects are not accessible, but still whatever the memory was allocated, that memory will be there in the variable still, so that if you say nothing there, that memory variables will be released, so that it improves the performance. Set OXL equals to nothing, and in case sheet also. Okay, now I'm retrieving the username and password from here. That's it. But this could be a function. You can make it as a function. Instead of writing this much program, you can write one function, and then you can, whenever you want to retrieve the data, you can just call the function. Function should return the value for you. Okay, str file path has to be updated, right? This is the file. Right. See whether it will work or not. It's enter the value. Then what I will do is, okay, I don't want to touch my UFT at all here. I want to run with a different set of data. Then what I will do is here, I'll just come to this external location. I'll just do here. I'm not, assume that UFT is closed, everything is closed. I didn't even touch it. I just updated the value. You can see other value has been. So this gives me even more flexibility. Data table gives me the flexibility saying, I can update the data without touching the script, but the drawback is I still have to open the test to update the data, because data table is accessible within the test. So data table is one of the entity, one of the asset of the test. So that can be, each asset can be accessible only when the parent is accessed. So when the test is opened, then only data table can be opened. But again, when I have huge amount of tests and data need to be updated, opening each and every test gives me, it takes a lot of time for me. So that is the reason what we will do is, okay, instead of storing in the data table, if I can store in external location completely, then I get the flexibility of, without opening the test, I can update the data and I can do a batch execution of the tests. Similarly, we also learned how to read the data from Notepad, how to read the data from an XML file, how to read the data from a database. So similar kind of program, whatever I have written here, you can write for an XML, or you can write for database, and then you can read the data. But I'm not going to tell them right now. Okay, but that's a process. But you understood, right? So in case if the data is keep changing, then you don't hardcode the data directly in the script. You store the data in external location and we read from that location. But same script we discussed already in the VB script. No change, no method has been changed here. Okay, next I enter the username. Next what you need to do? You need to enter the password. Then say browser dot page dot, again what is the password here? Web edit dot. Okay, now if you say set here, then I will I'm entering the password here. I'll say admin. That's a password. Then str password equals to oshi dot cells of 2 comma that value. Now I will enter str password. But is that the right thing that you have done there? Because password is always secured, right? Password is always secured. So nobody should be able to see your password there. So what you should do? Password should be entered in, even though I'm storing there, but encrypted. It has to be encrypted, right? So what I will do, instead of storing the password directly there, I mean the complete password, decoded password, I will encode the password and then I will write the encoded password in the data file, and I have to read that encoded text. I have to enter into the field, right? Then what I have to do now, I need to encrypt the password and then pass that. How do I do that? In the program files and go to the HP software folder in all programs. As soon as you install UFT, that comes there, that folder. Inside that HP software, extract the tools folder, expand the tools folder. Can I see there is something called password encoder here? Open it. Do this offline, not in front of all, maybe because the password is secured. But for now, the password itself is displayed there. So I'm opening. I'm just doing in front of you. Otherwise, in case if my personal password it was, then I would have did it offline. Okay. So now open that password encoder. Enter the password, your password, and click on generate. So if you see just below, it's displayed encoded string. Then what you do is you just copy it. Whatever the password is, whatever the encoded value displayed, copy it, close it. Come to your data file. Enter the encoded value. Now, when I say this, it will retrieve whatever the value is stored. But is it a direct value? No. So what I have to do is, I need to tell to my script saying that, okay, the value what I am passing now, str password, is it an encoded value? So whenever you are passing an encoded value to the field, you should not use set method, because when you use set method, what happens is this value will be treated as a direct value, not as an encoded value. So that is the reason what you need to do is, whenever you are entering encoded value, there is something called set secure. That's what I told you. You need to understand what input that I am providing and what method that or what action I need to perform. So set secure is a method to enter the encoded script into the, or encoded value into the edit field. Okay. Then next, what I have to do? I need to click on login button. Browser dot page, same hierarchy it is, dot, it is web button this time, right? It's a login button, it is dot login, auto populated because only one button is there. Click, right? Then there, done that, correct. You can see password is entered and then it's clicked on login button also, then it is logging in actually. Logged in. Can you see the actions have been performed? Right. Same thing I will do again. Now, do you expect that browser will be opened already and you run on that open browser? No. I can't open the browser before and then I run the script only on the browser which is opened. My script should automatically open. I can just specify what what kind of browser it has to open. Is it a Chrome browser or is it an Internet Explorer that I need to a script should open, and what URL it has to navigate to, because URL also may vary from environment to environment, right? So from dev to QA, server will vary. Obviously, when the server varies, URL will get vary. Now what I have to do is, I need to ask my script, if I run the script, then it will fail because it cannot locate the browser because the browser is closed. So what I should do is, now I need to ask my script saying that, hey, okay, before you run, verify open the browser, so-and-so browser, and navigate to so-and-so URL, and then start executing the script. That means before we start executing these methods, first the browser has to be launched. Right? Now, how do I launch the browser? We have something called record and run settings. In the record and run settings, in the web environment, because I need to launch the browser, right? And in the recording and run settings, what is the option selected? Record and run on the browser which is already opened, on any open browser. That means it is expecting that browser is to be launched already before I perform the methods. But since the browser is not opened, then I need to launch the browser. So second option says that opening the following address when a record or run session begins. That means whenever the run session starts, whenever I click on run, open the given browser. As said, Chrome browser, I need to launch, then give the URL of the browser. I'm just giving, those are displayed in the drop down because I was mapped sometime. But when you are opening for first time, then that URL won't be displayed automatically. Remember, you can type it. Okay, so you need to type that URL. Okay, now if I say here, apply OK and run the script, you can see the browser is automatically launched there and then it entered. Okay, now can I expect the same URL and same browser every time? No. Because sometimes my script need to be executed in Internet Explorer, and I need to launch a different URL, or I need to navigate a different URL, depends on which server the application is deployed into. But what I am doing now, I am setting the browser, I am setting the URL here. That means I am utilizing the tool feature. But when you do this setting, whenever the URL gets changed, I need to come here, I need to open that setting, and then I need to update the URL. Whenever I need to run on a different browser, I need to open this setting again, I need to do it. So again I need to open, whenever I want to execute the script, I need to open the tool and then I need to change the setting under. But again it takes some time. It doesn't give me the flexibility to run on any URL or to launch any browser I want. So what should I do now? I will remain this setting. I will select the first setting only. Then I will ask my tool saying that before you execute the script or the login transaction, the first transaction would be launching the browser. That is programmatic. Okay, before you execute for login, then first launch the browser and then perform the login action, whatever I have given there. So what should I do now? In the program itself, I need to, before I enter the username, the first step would be launching the browser and navigating. So programmatically I need to launch. Tool gives me some methods to launch the browser. Says systemutil.run. But there are other methods also available, but it's not time to discuss about complete details. So systemutil.run. What does it mean there? Chrome.exe means run an exe file which is defined for Chrome. Chrome.exe is for Chrome, but for Internet Explorer it is iexplore.exe. then comma URL, give the URL, which URL it has to navigate to. I'm just giving the browser and I'm giving the URL and see whether it gets executed or not. Right? Then. Now, can you expect the same browser again every time? No. Right? Next I want to run an Internet Explorer. Again I need to come here. Explore.exe. And then you can see Internet Explorer has been launched this time. But again, I can't expect the same browser, right, every time. So whenever the browser gets changed, then I can't come to here. I can't come to the script and then I can do the update. Again, for a functional tester, it will be difficult for him to update. That's the reason what I will do is this also I will parameterize. Then let me do one thing. Coming here, then this details probably I will store it in a different sheet. Then I will say it as browser type and then second one is URL. I'll give the URL here. Whatever the URL it has to navigate to. Then browser is, I will give it as Chrome. I'm not giving it as exe because end user, when it is non-functional tester and all, then understanding that exe file name may be little difficult. So what I will do is in the data file, I'll just create a drop down saying if I give iexplore.exe and all there, user cannot may understand what is that iexplore.exe. But if you provide the browser name, he can understand much better. So he can select whatever he wants here. So if he wants to run in Internet Explorer, he can select it and he can save that, so that script should launch automatically the Internet Explorer. Getting what I'm saying here? Then now sheet 1 equals to owb.worksheets of or of 2. You can just give 2 or sheet 2, name of the sheet you provide. Right? So in one workbook there are 2 sheets, so I'm opening 2 sheets here. str browser equals to sheet 1 dot cells of 2 comma 1 is a browser. It should be sheet 1. str URL equals to sheet 1 dot cells of 2 comma 2. But again, I'm hard coding the column numbers here, column name, column number and the row number. But that should not happen in the real. Again, we will, because we are going to do those enhancements later. Okay, now. Will it work now? Whatever the browser that I have given, launch it. Will it work? Still no. Because what will come into the str browser? Chrome or Internet Explorer, anything, whatever is there selected. What should I pass to the system it will return? Can I pass Internet Explorer directly? No. I have to give the process name there. For a system.run, it demands the process name, not the browser name directly. So when I pass the Internet Explorer str browser, if I have selected Internet Explorer there, what will come into the str URL? Sorry, str browser, Internet Explorer will come there. That cannot be passed to the system.run directly. So what I have to ask my script is, if str browser is taken Internet Explorer, pass iexplorer.exe. If user is selected Internet Explorer there, take iexplorer.exe is the process, as the process. If Chrome has come, or user may update as Google Chrome, I may give as Google Chrome there. If user has taken Chrome or Google Chrome, whatever that we created the dropdown, take it as chrome.exe. If user has given Firefox there, take it as firefox.exe. Right? So I cannot pass the str browser directly there. What I will do now, select case str browser, case Chrome. If the Chrome has come there, str browser type equals to chrome.exe. It's not it can be in any case. exe file name can be in any case, no problem. Case Internet Explorer. If str browser is Internet Explorer, then str browser type equals to if not Internet Explorer he has given, or if it is not Chrome, case else. If other than these two, give me message saying that invalid browser has been selected, unable to continue. Then what should I do? I need to stop the execution because I can't continue because it's a different browser. Exit run is a statement to stop the execution in the UFT. Where, I don't know, yesterday or day for yesterday I have written wscript.quit I have written. Did I write? Probably, maybe for somebody or some other people, we don't know. Probably the senior people know here. wscript.quit I have used. What is that? To stop the execution in between in case if the condition is not satisfied. Here wscript.quit will not work in the tool. That is only for the VB script. In the tool, you can use exit run is a statement which we use to stop the execution of that particular test. So what I am doing now? Now I will pass, instead of str browser, I will pass str browser type here. What does it mean? What will come into the str browser type? If str browser will take the value from the Excel. If str browser is Internet Explorer, str browser type will be iexplorer.exe. In case if the str browser is Chrome, then str browser type will be chrome.exe. Then in case if other than Chrome or Internet Explorer, script will not come here. It will be stopped here only. That's what I told. This is the use of the conditional statements. Okay? Then let me do one thing. Let me change the font size. Visible? Okay, now what I will do, I have selected Internet Explorer. It launched Internet Explorer and then executed. Next. I don't do any change in the script, but what I will do is here, not here, I've not done any, only script, I'm just clicking on run, that's it. Nothing, no modification is there. Can you see? Chrome is executing. Okay, next. Let's log in. Firefox, but this browser probably not there, so it goes to the case else. Right now I'm selecting Firefox. It goes to case else because that browser is not currently supported. I mean, Firefox is supported, but the version what I have is not supported. So that's the reason I'm considering it as an invalid browser. It says that invalid browser has been selected, unable to continue, and then execution has been stopped. Right? Okay. Now, assume I will select the right browser, maybe Internet Explorer or Chrome. Now, assume I'm not disconnected from network, or network is down, or the application server is down. Okay, just consider that. Will it work now? It launches the browser, but it cannot navigate to the given URL because network is down. It cannot. So what it says now, you are trying to enter the username, but that username is not located here. The username is not displayed, and see what happens here. It says that cannot identify the username because that is not loaded. So what should I do now? I should not encounter this kind of issues, because if I get this kind of issue, then I'm forced to click on stop or retry something and then continue. That means I have to be there at the system to close those kind of errors. But when I'm running as a batch, probably I will just click on run and then it has to continue. And in case if there is any object doesn't exist or any condition fails, then stop that test and move to the next test automatically. So batch will be executed. Now, what should I do to enter the username or to perform the login transaction? What should I do? Application has to be in the login screen of that orange HRM. Then only perform the login. So now come to the precondition here. Till now we understood how the data and all will be managed. Now understand the precondition here. To perform this login transaction, I have to be in the right page, right? I have to be in the right page. Then only perform the transaction. If I am in a wrong page, then don't do that. So that I can avoid such kind of errors and all. Okay, now how can I say that I am in right page or not to perform the login? When the username field is displayed in the application, that means that I am in the right page. So what should I do now? I have to verify if the username field exists, then enter the username, password, and I don't need to verify for all the objects. If the username is displayed, that means that I'm in the login page. At least to verify whether I'm in a right page or not. So before I perform these transactions, what should I do? I need to verify this object is present or not. Say if there is a method called exist. This is available for every object, not only for an edit field, web edit or username field. Every object that we take, for every object they have provided exist method. This exist method will verify whether the object is present or not. In case if the object is present, exist returns true. In case if the object doesn't present or doesn't exist, then exist will return false. Then what I'm doing is, If it is exist, then only perform the login. Else, just give me, remember, we are not going to use this message box also, because when the message box displays, I have to manually close that message box. But as I told, we don't be at the system, or sometimes what happens is we'll be having some remote machines or VMware machines we'll be having, and execution will be scheduled in the remote machines. In the local system, I will be doing my work. When I'm running that, I don't keep open that remote machine. So that will be there, scripts will be executing there, I will be doing my own work, and script should automatically execute all the batch executions I'm doing batch, all the scripts should be executed. But in case if I have provided a message box, then script will stop there only until unless I close the message box. That's the reason using message box is never allowed. We never allow the message box, that's not a standard. But why we used message boxes and all in VB script? Because we have to see the output manually, so that's the reason we used the message, because we didn't have any reporting format in the message VB script. So message box is one of the reporting format for us to understand what was the output. But tool gives you the option for reporting. Then what I will do is here, in case if the browser is not opened, or login page is not opened, so we will use some reporting methods. But again, those are tool specific reporting methods. Report event to write the reports. Make fail is to write a fail report, fail statement. Okay, so we will come to in this detail later. Then launch the browser and navigate to URL so URL. Okay, so in case if it doesn't exist, write a statement saying that okay, application was not launched. When it comes to else, only when the browser was not launched, right? Or when login page was not launched. So login page was not displayed, unable to log into the application. Then let's see, this time error will be thrown or execution will happen smoothly, and I will open the report. By default, in case if any of the object doesn't exist, it wait for 20 seconds. UFT will not directly throw the error saying that object is not exist. It will wait. That's the reason it taken that much time to stop the execution and all. So no error has been thrown because we have added the precondition. Perform the login transaction only when the browser was over, when the username was displayed. But in case if the username is not displayed, then go to the else, write a fail statement. Then let me open the result window. To open the result window, go to view and last run results. And you can see that the script has been failed there, and this is the result which will be shared to the team. Okay, see, its script is failed, and the method what I have executed is step launch the browser and navigate to the URL, so on URL, and it says that login page was not displayed, unable to log in. I will analyze the report, final report. I don't see any error message in the script. Now I will connect to the network. Now network is up. Now should it execute or should it fail? It should execute. It's being executed now, right? So if you open the result, it won't show it as failed, because fail will be executed only when it is So it's passed now. This is how, I just gave the basics here. How the process would be when you are writing the, what kind of things that you have to take care when you are writing the scripts. We just directly don't write the script on every object. So the first thing is you need to understand what objects and what properties it has to take when we add the objects. Then what is the object hierarchy and what was the class it has considered and what is the hierarchy it's added in the repository when I add it. And is it the object? Are these objects coming only in one action or multiple actions? So that you can decide whether it's a local or shared repository. Then what kind of action that I need to perform? So use appropriate method on that. To access that object, you have to write the entire hierarchy of that object in the script. But you have a way. Browser and page are keep repeating, right? You can take the browser and page into one variable and you can make reuse of that page object. We'll come see that later. Then, what is the input that we need to pass in case input is required? Is that input direct input or encoded input? A secured data? And in case if it is not input, what is the other action? And when that action, in case if that input, is that a static input or dynamic input? If it is static input, you can directly hard code it. That means if the input never gets changed data. Or in case if the data gets changed every time, then don't hard code it directly inside the script. Write it in external file so that I can give the flexibility, or I will get the flexibility of run the script in any data whatever I want. Then the method or the transaction what I perform, that method or transaction should not be performed directly. I have a precondition set there. On this precondition only execute that. If any of the precondition doesn't satisfy, don't execute the piece of code and then fail the piece of code saying that, or fail that particular test saying that, okay, so and so condition is not satisfied and unable to execute, and stop it. In case if the condition is satisfied, then execute it. So these are the things that your script should answer always. Reporting also, not the message box anymore, and we use the different reporting format. But again, to understand the technical, the report, whatever I displayed there, maybe some technical knowledge is required. But you can still customize. You can generate the report in the own format, whatever the format that you want. Like you can what and all the steps written, you can write it in Excel step by step, and you can write pass or failure in the Excel, or you can create one HTML file with the detailed steps and status of each step. And that comes later, but that is too advanced for you now. Okay, so this is the process of the writing the scripts always. Whenever, the methods what I used here, maybe the VB script and tool specific. If you see that, so many of the methods you already know here. That comes from pure VB script, direct VB script. But the tool specific, whenever I'm dealing with the objects inside the application, then I'm using tool specific. Generic things, VB script only. This is the reason why we have learned VB script earlier. Conditional statement from VB script only, right? Or the select case and all from VB script, right? But the approach what we followed, for any tool, the same approach. But the methods what we used may be the tool specific. Okay? So always first try to learn the approach, then method. Don't understand the method directly. First understand what action, why it is, and then come to the method. That is the easy way to learn. Okay? Right. So we'll stop here today. And